mudufashe kwakira nyakubahwa perezida wa repubulika aho muri hirya no hino mwizihiza umunsi wo kwibohora. Ni ikiganiro kigiye kugaruka ku buzima bw'igihugu, ikiganiro kiri bunavuge kandi ku Rwanda mu ruhando mpuzamahanga, akaba ariyo mpamvu turi bugikore mu Kinyarwanda ndibarore Cleophas, ariko kandi turibuze no kumubaza no mu Cyongereza ni kumwe na mugenzi wanjye Isabelle Masozera ukoreshe ururimi muri iki kiganiro, kandi namwe muri buze kugira umwanya n'uruhare muri cyo mwifashishije umurongo wa telefone, hanyuma muganire n'umukuru w'igihugu. Nyakubahwa perezida wa repubulika, ntabwo twahirahira gutangira kugira ikindi tubaza tutabanje kwifuriza isabukuru nziza yo kwibohora. Mwakoze cyane nyakubahwa perezida wa repubulika. N'undi munsi wo ubwigenge w'ikindi gihugu cy'igihangange Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika, ari turebe muri uyu mwanya bireba u Rwanda. Imyaka 28 irashize twabonye u Rwanda mu isura igenda ihinduka iva mu bwiza ijya mu bundi bwiza, namwe ubwanyu muherutse kubivuga nyakubahwa perezida wa repubulika muri ya nama ikomeye ya COGAM hano i Kigali. Ariko twifuza mu gutangira iki kiganiro kubabaza nyakubahwa perezida wa repubulika, iyo mureba imbaraga mwebwe ubwanyu nabo mwagiye mufatanya kandi mukomeje gufatanya mu kubaka u Rwanda muri myaka 28, iyo mureba uyu munsi rusa n'izo mbaraga ubwanyu mwashyizemo nabo mufatanya, haba imbere mu gihugu haba no mu ruhando mpuzamahanga?
Reka mbere ku banza gusuhuza abanyarwanda bose no kubifuriza uyu munsi mwiza, ariko nibutsa ko uyu munsi tariki 4 Nyakanga ari umunsi twizihiza mu by'ukuri isabukuru z'ubwoko bubiri. Iya mbere ari tubitwarira hamwe, iya mbere ni ubwigenge twabonye hashize imyaka 60 ubu, hanyuma 28 yo kwibohora. Bijya hamwe rero birahura 60 ubwigenge, 28 kwibohora. Ubundi ubwigenge byari kuba itariki ya 1 Nyakanga, ariko hanyuma kwibohora itariki 4, kugira ngo twari ibintu byose hamwe, dufata umunsi umwe dufata undi nyuma y'iminsi mike twabishyize hamwe. Nagira ngo rero byose mbishyize hamwe nifurize umunsi mwiza ku banyarwanda bose. Ku kibazo warumbajije nsubiza amaso inyuma, usanga iby'abanyarwanda bakoze ingeri zose, hari abari ku rugamba barwanye, batanze ibyo ubuzima bwabo, ndetse benshi bakaba batakiriho. Hanyuma n'ibyagiye bikorwa nyuma yo kwibohora kugeza ubu, ntabwo ushidikanya ko umuntu yavuga ko usibye amateka mabi yatumye abantu barwana, abantu ndetse bakatakaza ubuzima bwabo, nta ushidikanya ko ibyinshi byakozwe nyuma yaho bigaragara kugeza n'uyu munsi, kandi bigenda byiyongera. Ibyo byiza bigenda bikorwa bihindura ubuzima bw'abanyarwanda bukaba bwiza kurusha uko bwari bumeze mu myaka yashize. Biragaragara, ni intambwe nziza, ni intambwe twifuza kongera, kwihuta mu bikorwa ndetse no kugera kuri byinshi tugifitiye ingamba kugira ngo tubigereho. Ntabwo rero navuga ngo hari ibikwiye kuba byarakozwe ukundi cyangwa byaragezweho bitagezweho, kuko ntabwo ibintu byose biba 100%, ariko iyo hari intambwe igaragara, iyo hari ibikorwa bigaragara, abantu nabo barabyemera nyine bakubakira kuri ibyo, bagakomeza bashaka kugera ku bindi.
Bisaba imbaraga mubona mushyiramo?
Birangana, imbaraga zishyirwamo zingana n'ibyo tubona bigerwaho. Ngewe numva nashidikanya, abantu bashyizemo imbaraga nyinshi, abantu baritanze, abantu n'uyu munsi barakora, barumva iyo babwiwe. Amikoro si menshi cyane nk'uko tuba tuyifuza, dukoresha amikoro make ariko tukagera kuri byinshi. Navuga rero ko ntabwo navuga ko hari ibyabusanye, ahubwo nibura ko ibikorwa uko bikorwa n'ibigerwaho bihura, mbese nk'uko ikibazo cyabajijwe.
Aho ni imbere mu gihugu, ariko mu ruhando mpuzamahanga naho ni imbere mu gihugu mwafashe umwanya nabo mufatanya muriyigisha, mushyiramo izo mbaraga zose. Mu ruhando mpuzamahanga naho turi mu Rwanda on the high table, ku meza hose yo hejuru muri imyaka 28 ko twabwira abanyarwanda muri uyu mwanya ko u Rwanda rubikesha iki? Aho habayemo nko kwibohora mu by'ukuri ukurikije uko umuryango mpuzamahanga wafataga rimwe na rimwe n'ubu ushobora kuba ugifata ibihugu ugishakisha uko bitera imbere.
Ahenshi navuga ko nanone abantu babikesha abanyarwanda, kubera ko bihera cyangwa se bishingira ku bimaze kugerwaho. Abantu no hanze benshi bamwe bazi u Rwanda, bazi aho rwavuye, bazi aho rugeze ubu, bituma bubaha abanyarwanda, cyangwa se babona ko abanyarwanda bakoresha ukuri, bavugisha ukuri. Hari benshi batagiye bumva amateka y'u Rwanda uko ateye, cyangwa se bashatse kwiyumva uko bashatse bitewe n'uruhande bariho, cyangwa se uruhare baba barabigizemo byatumye amateka y'u Rwanda aba mabi. Ibyo birahari, ariko cyane cyane ukuri kw'ibimaze kwerekanwa muri ayo mateka n'ibimaze gukorwa bigaragara buri wese, byagiye bituma abantu batumvaga neza u Rwanda cyangwa batumvaga amateka y'u Rwanda bagenda barushaho gusobanukirwa, ndetse bakemera ukuri u Rwanda rubabwira, kuko uko kuri gusa n'ibikorwa n'ibigaragara bimaze kugerwaho mu gihugu. Byarafashije rero, ibyakozwe byagezweho mu gihugu bifasha kumvikanisha u Rwanda aho ruva n'aho rujya, n'uko ruteye n'ukuri kwarwo. Aho ngaho mu mahanga hari urujijo, ndetse urujijo rumwe rutwarwa na bamwe abanzi b'u Rwanda kandi b'abanyarwanda rimwe na rimwe, cyangwa se n'abo bakoranye nabo mu bikorwa bibi. U Rwanda nabo bari hanze, bafatanya n'abo banyarwanda n'abanyamahanga. Ibyo ubona mbese ibyo bavuga bo cyangwa icyo bifuriza u Rwanda kitagerwaho, kubera ko ibikorwa mu Rwanda birivugira ubwabyo, bigatuma abandi bamenya ukuri, ntibabe bajijwa uko u Rwanda ruteye cyangwa uko ruri.
Tuvuga ko mwebwe ibikorwa nabyo turabyita ambasaderi y'u Rwanda,
cyane cyane ibikorwa nibyo byivugira, ababikora bo baza nyuma, ariko ikiri imbere ni ibikorwa.
Nyakubahwa Perezida wa Repubulika, uyu munsi hatashywe umudugudu w'icyitegererezo mu karere ka Nyaruguru mu ntara y'Amajyepfo. Uwo mudugudu w'icyitegererezo uriyongera ku mashanyarazi yakwirakwijwe ku kigero kiri hejuru ya za 70% muri iki gihe, biva hafi muri 3% mu myaka 28. Biriyongera ku mazi meza, biriyongera kuri girinka, biriyongera no ku bindi bikorwa binyuranye. Nyakubahwa Perezida wa Repubulika, biriya bikorwa remezo bishyikirizwa abaturage birahuranye no kwibohora. Icyo ni ikintu cya kabiri. Twumva abaturage iyo bumvise Nyaruguru hatashe uriya mudugudu bitegure ko n'abo handi bazavuga bati natwe, mbese muri imyaka 28 babaye natwe. Ku ruhande rwa guverinoma mwebwe mubasaba iki? Uhawe akwiye no kwitura.
Ibyo bikorwa ari ibyo guha abaturage amashanyarazi, ubundi bakwiye kuba nyine bayabona. Leta ikora ibishoboka byose kugira ngo ari amazi, ari amashanyarazi, ari ibindi bishobora gufasha abanyarwanda kugira icyo bikorera ngo biteze imbere. Leta n'ikibereyeho, tugerageza rero kugira ngo leta itange ihe abaturage ibyo bayitezeho.
Niko mubona leta zose?
Njye navugira iyo ndimo, leta z'ahandi cyangwa z'abandi ntabwo zindeba, ntabwo nazitaho umwanya, usibye gufatanya nabo ku bitureba twembi, ari ibindi bihugu ko dufatanya mu nyungu zabo n'izacu, twese twuzuzanya. Ibyo ngibyo niho nibanda, ariko ibindi bikorwa neza cyangwa nabi ibyo ntabwo nabitaho umwanya. Ariko ndibwira ko ibyo bigaragaza bya bikorwa twavuze mbere bimaze kugerwaho, byivugira. Iyo umuturage atabonaga amazi meza, atabonaga amashanyarazi, atabona ibindi bikoresho byo kwiteza imbere, bakaba bibona, icyo ni ikinyuranyo kiba kigaragarira buri wese, kandi n'abaturage ubwabo bakabyivugira. Ibyo rero rimwe na rimwe ibyo navugaga ko ibikorwa byivugira ubwabyo, utabibona n'udashaka kubibona gusa, cyangwa byita irindi zina nuko ariko yahisemo, ariko abaturage bo bafite ukuri babyita kandi bagiraho ingaruka ku buryo bibateza imbere. Yaba bidahari nyine bakadindira, ubwabo nibo duheraho kuri ibyo ngibyo.
Mukabasaba iki nyuma y'uko bo babasaba?
Icyo tubasaba ni ukubakira aho ngaho, bakatera indi ntambwe irenze iyo leta bakoranye nayo kugira ngo bagereho, no gufata ibyo bikorwa remezo neza, kubirinda, usibye kubikoresha neza nyine nk'uko aricyo baba babiherewe, bagomba kubirinda kugira ngo bitangirika. Hanyuma ejo bigasaba ko bongera gusaba leta kubaha ibyo yari yabahaye imbere, kandi byari bikwiye kuramba bakabikoresha igihe cyose.
Mr. President, I know a lot has been talked about children, but please allow me to divert your attention to matters of regional diplomacy, and specifically Rwanda and DRC. Our stations wars between M23 and the Congolese army, we saw a lot of hostility. We saw hate speech, we also saw killings aimed at Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese. And also recently, as the president of DRC was giving a speech for independence, he specifically said that no doubt Rwanda was backing a rebellion on their territory. How would you respond to him? And secondly, what do you think can be done about this crisis?
Everything or most of these things have a history, so it's not just like it happened anyhow. So the history of either Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese or these crises that happen on and off over the years between Congo and Rwanda have a history. And we have been in these kinds of situations, we have had to say things that we think needed to be addressed, but they were never addressed properly, and that's how these matters keep recurring. Let me give you an example. the so-called M23. There was a crisis in 2012, I think. And this crisis drew in all kinds of countries and regions, and including international institutions, and like the UN, and the countries, powers that decide on many things. And they made one mistake, which we pointed out at that time, that such matters are not resolved by force of arms. They don't require military solutions. They require more political solutions. They ignored what we were telling them. They just, fought the so-called M23 without even understanding why it was born and how it came to be. Defeated it, and the remnants fled to two countries mainly. One group went to Uganda, another group came to Rwanda. And these groups, some of them are still in Rwanda, others in Uganda. But we kept reminding them that there was a political solution that they needed to apply, which they didn't. Maybe that since they had been defeated militarily, there was need to address those matters politically. And that is this, as you call them, Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese. It means they speak Kinyarwanda, but they are Congolese citizens. How they became citizens of Congo cannot be blamed on Congo or cannot be blamed on Rwanda. We didn't decide that these people go to Congo to be their citizens, and maybe the Congolese didn't decide that. But that's the fact of the matter. So how do you, at any one point, just decide that you are now going to declare people no longer citizens of their countries? Where do you start from? And how can you actually effect that? Now what happens, the same people will always find ways of pushing back, of fighting back, of making sure that they have to belong somewhere. Now, saying that they belong to Rwanda is a big mistake, because all the years they have been in Congo, they know Congo as their own country. And of course there is the mix of drawing of borders and so on in the early times during colonial times. So if you want to push back these people and throw them out of the country they belong to, then you better throw them out with the land they have been occupying, which happens to be on one side or the other by just arbitrary lines that were drawn during colonial times. But that's, maybe I shouldn't even have said that, because some people will distort it and complicate it and say different things, but that's not what I meant. I'm just applying the logic to this whole matter. So, these people are forgotten. By the way, we have refugees here from Congo. They've been staying here for now close to 2 decades. And most of them, these Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese. They left their homes, their ancestral homes in the other side of the Congo. We've been asking different governments in Congo that these people need to be taken back to their countries, to their country and to their places where they belong. Or that government of the DRC, whichever government it was, needed to find a way of speaking to these people and reintegrating them back in the society of Congo. That did not happen until recently. In fact, when President Tshisekedi became president, right from the outset, these matters were discussed with him directly or with his officials. In fact, on the side of M23, the officials of DRC came here several times talking to these people directly, because when they were thrown out of Congo and came here, we disarmed them and gave back to Congo these arms they were using to fight their country. But what remained was the repatriation of these people back to Congo, which never happened. And even under President Tshisekedi, these officials came here, met them several times, and promised them they were actually going to address that problem. And with our assistance, because we would talk to them, with our people trying to assist and, to find ways of taking them back. They came here several times, they talked to them, they would go back, the promises made to them, which were never fulfilled, they come back another time, then another time, then another time, several times. So, until recently, when this fighting was about to happen, we were talking to DRC again and actually alerting them to the information we had that this trouble was again building up and they needed to do something, which they never did. So I'm not, on one hand I'm surprised, and on the other I'm not surprised, because for that history that has been talked about so many times, you wouldn't expect people to be confused about it, because the facts are clear. On the other, I'm not surprised, because this has come to be the thing to expect that has happened over these last 20 years. Just back and forth, and completely using wrong arguments. But there are people in the world who listen to such wrong arguments and based on them to even make wrong decisions. In fact, when they were defeated, and then there was a force that was created, Force Intervention Brigade, then there was MONUSC under the UN, and all these were supposed to make sure that, first of all, there is peace, there is a ceasefire, but that ceasefire facilitating political solutions. One, there has been a process, for example, you may know, of FDLR, these remnants of Interahamwe and genociders. They have different group names. There's FDLR, there's Group Runana, there's all kinds of stuff. So there has been a process of repatriation. In fact, a number of them have been brought back, even through the hands of the UN, and reintegrated back in society. So it has been going on for a long time. Many of them, probably more came than those who remained. For a fact, the ones who remained were the core group that, for them, they think it is a fight and they must fight, and for them they are fighting even for the wrong cause, because they are talking about the story of Rwanda. It's like that was underlying the genocide itself. So they want a country for one group of people, not for the other. And for us, we've been saying, all groups belong here. Those ones that, as we found it, as God created our country, and people happen to be here, they are one and the same, and they need to be together. But for the hardcore, they think of different things. So now, recently, these FDLR are fighting alongside FARDC, those are the forces of Congo, against the M23. And then to make it worse, the UN got into the mix. They were purportedly supporting the FARDC, meaning the government forces, but they knew very well that these government forces of the DRC are fighting together with the FDLR against M23. So you have one M23 on one side, and then you have MONUSC, government forces of Congo, and FDLR. FDLR, which should have been fought and eliminated from that situation, together with repatriating them, those who wanted to come back home, which we have done. So that's where we are. And that's why I cannot understand why the president of Congo, in his statement to the press, says such a thing as he said, because he should very well know the facts as they are, because we have even discussed these matters for a long time, well before, since he came to power and well before this crisis. So this crisis, therefore, will require one thing. There are a number of things that have happened which I haven't mentioned, but I mentioned them in the conclusion of my point. One, Congo has its own things to deal with, and we have our own things to deal with as independent sovereign countries. Without having to interfere with each other, we just have to work together, where we choose to work together. And it is not acceptable, it's not going to ever be, that FDLR, these genocidal forces, or remnants of them, will be armed to attack Rwanda. And if you remember, in 2019, there was an attack that came from Congo. 2019 in November, I think, where groups infiltrated through the Virunga Mountains and attacked Kinigi, and our forces intervened, defeated them, and removed them. So, and second, we have had the sharing from the RC territory into Rwanda, which damaged, killed people, damaged property, and several times. Now, so we are saying, all along we need peace, and we need peace for both of us. There needs to be peace in Rwanda, there needs to be peace in DRC. Therefore, we should give each other peace. So it's not acceptable that FDLR ever would be supported to cross into our territory or supported to share into our territory and kill our citizens. We have not done that to Congo. Second, there is a need to politically address this problem of Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese, including those members of so-called M23. But that is the problem of Congo to address, it's not mine.
If you could allow me interrupt, Mr. President. You say that it's not your problem, it's not Rwanda's problem, it's a Congo problem. However, Rwanda keeps on being dragged into the situation.
Yes.
And you have so eloquently talked about the history. This is not the first time. The situation keeps evolving and evolving. Rwanda has suggested what could be the solution. You said arms wouldn't solve this. And yet some of those solutions that are being suggested are not being taken into consideration. And you have a head of state going on record constantly affirming some of those allegations. You talked of facts being ignored. Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? Do you think there's anything that can be done from the Rwanda side to find a way where there could be a different outcome and perhaps history could paint a different picture moving forward?
Well, for lack of a better way of putting it myself, first of all, I wish for the best for all of us, for both of us, Congo and Rwanda. But if the best doesn't come, you should always find me prepared for the worst. So that's the first way I approach it. I prepare for the worst, but wish for the best. And I mean it. I mean it to say I wish for Congo the best, as I do wish for myself, for my country. But again, there is no magic solution here for me, other than presenting the facts as I understand them. And the facts have been presented. So it's up to all the players concerned with this problem, whether they are Congolese or Rwandans or the internationals involved one or the other, maybe to stick to the facts and find the best way out of this problem based on the facts, not people creating their own facts or simply thinking that they will impose a solution to one party or the other. So that's the only way I can say it. There is no other way.
But still on this issue, Mr. President, we do have a question that came in from a member of the international media community, Loch from RFI, who says the Congolese government said that no Rwandan troops will be in the East African Community Force set to be deployed in Eastern DRC, while Rwanda had said it was ready to participate. What is your reaction to this conclusion? Will Rwanda participate at another level in the force?
First of all, they are talking about the East African Community Force. And much as we are all new, if my memory serves me well, Rwanda was in the East African Community before DRC. But that's okay, we are members of the East African Community. So when they were talking of East African Community Force, naturally that implied Rwanda is part of the force, right? But to make the process and the solution easier, if the party concerned, which is the DRC, claims it has problems with Rwanda participating, I have no problem with that. We are not begging anyone that we participate in the force. All right? But what that also means, whoever goes there, whoever is liked or is invited by DRC to be part of the East African Community Force, excluding Rwanda, which I have no problem with, must address these problems I was talking about. You see what I mean? If everybody is coming from anywhere, excluding Rwanda, but to provide a solution that we are all looking for, why would I have a problem? If they come saying, we are going to eliminate this FDLR from this equation that keeps creating problems between Rwanda and the DRC, and keep saying we are going to support peace in this part of the region, Western Congo, and make sure that, one, the Kinyarwanda-speaking communities, M23, are now reabsorbed into the Congolese society and given rights as the citizens of this country, and there is no more. These people have no reason to keep fighting or causing any trouble, and if a force is going to support that political process of supporting the government of Congo to reach a solution to this effect, why would Rwanda have a problem with that? If this force gives guarantees to Rwanda that no more sharing from Congo of your territory by either the Congolese or by FDLR because you have eliminated them, why would I be opposed to that? In fact, I'm very happy that this can be done without our involvement. Yes, because getting involved is a cost to us. So why would I incur the cost when somebody is saying, no, I'm happy to do it for you? I have no problem with that. Absolutely.
Another center of attraction for controversy and criticism has been Rwanda's planned reception of migrants from the UK. If I could engage you on that, Mr. President, especially we saw a lot of criticism, heavy criticism, after the cancellation of the first chartered plane that was set to bring in asylum seekers. Now, could you please shed more light on why Rwanda entered into this partnership with the UK to begin with, and also what the next steps could be for the Rwandan government concerning this issue?
Well, first of all, the migration problem is a very complicated problem all over the world. Having said that, if we can contribute even a bit to addressing it, we are happy to do that. And by the way, given that migration or refugees issues are not new to us, some of us have lived that kind of life for decades. So we fully understand what that means. The other problem is defining the rights and many issues about migration is difficult in itself. There are rights of people as human beings that should be respected wherever these human beings are. To an extent, mine, personally, my rights were respected to an extent when I was still a refugee, which I was decades, for decades. Of course, but those rights are only limited in a sense as rights of a human being. You are only given the minimum. So in far as referring to the minimum, I was at least afforded that. The other one, let's say the bigger question, like the one of UK and in the partnership with Rwanda. How it came about, this was building on a history again. I like referring to things as they build up in history. We got involved with assisting in migration issues, first with Israel, second with Libya, third we helped in a small way with Afghanistan, and then there came UK. So this is the fourth. Specifically, let me single out the one for Libya, which we went out to actually asked to help. The other three, we were asked to help. But for this one, we are the ones who asked to help. So with Libya, with people stuck in Libya, with the crisis that had taken place in Libya, which had been used as a transit route for migrants to the north, to Europe, from different parts of Africa. They're going through Libya and most of them dying in the Mediterranean. And so, but because of the crisis in Libya, thousands of them got stuck in Libya in different towns, and they were in prison. Literally, prison is what I'm talking about. It's a fact. And detained for years, for months, for years. And they were stuck there. In fact, they started smuggling these people who were stuck, buying them as slaves, taken to different parts of the world. So we could see people in cages and buyers coming and looking at who is still fit, not macheted or starving, and we take them to one. This is the situation. And we offered. In fact, we did that when I was the chairman of the African Union. And I told people, I said, these people, Rwanda has many challenges, we have our own struggles, we are going through difficult situation, but we can provide a more decent living for these people, a better living for these people than we are seeing they are suffering. And we told them, we offered them, and said, we can bring them to Rwanda and then allow the people in the world who want to help to be able to help. One, by either the countries that can offer these people asylum, they will do it in a stable environment that is within Rwanda. They come and see who they want to absorb and take to their countries, peacefully pick whoever they want. Another country will come and take whoever they want to go and settle. The second, we would give a chance to these people to say, do you want to go back home where you came from? After discovering that your venture didn't work properly for you, would you now want to go back home? The third category would be, if you have nobody picking you to take you to their countries, and you don't want to go back to your country, we can even offer you to stay here with us. Still, it is a better situation than you're having detained in Libya. So, as you are aware, so many have been brought here, and now about 1,000 of them have actually been taken to different countries, to the United States, to Canada, to some Scandinavian countries, and so on. So, could there have been a better way of dealing with it? At least for us, we couldn't think of a better way of doing it. For the others, why didn't they think of a better way of doing it? But at least we offered and saved the situation. Now, with this one of the UK specifically, if I may come to that, UK and Rwanda. UK has been facing a problem of people smugglers. Like we had the experience in Libya. These people are smuggled, and some of them sold and bought like commodities. So there have been people exchanging money and to transfer people by force and take them into UK. And it has been growing as a problem day to day, week after week, month after month, year after year. So the UK approached us. And based on the lessons they had learned about how we handled the Libyan case, and even the other two, Israel and Afghanistan cases, and said, can you help? And he said, for us, but if any other country wants the same, we shall offer it. It's not confined to. So if any other country approached us and said, we have a problem here, can you do this? We look at the merits of the case and say, sure. As long as you don't overburden us with this problem. Because we are a country that has no resources. We have limited resources.
Where do you draw the line? What looks like overburdening? Because there's been a lot of questions around capacity and burnout for the nation in terms of how much you are extending help.
Yeah, that's a good question. But what I mean is simple. If you are going to bring somebody here and say, I'll bring him here, I look after him. It's not you to look after him. Then I have no problem. Overburdening I'm talking about is to bring me somebody and then you say, look after him. Because I have no spare capacity to look after, even the one to look after one is so limited. So, but to that extent, I think, and by the way, we also learned lessons long ago. Remember when some of us were refugees outside of our country, and whenever we demanded to come back home, the government then used to tell us, they said, no, Rwanda is overpopulated. We have no place for you, so it's like you stay where you are. So, but what we learned from that, the country, any country is never full to that extent. It always has space, especially for its citizens. No question about it. But even then, a country like ours, which is, yes, densely populated, actually still not only has enough space for our people, we have enough space even for others. This is the lessons we learned. Yes.
Before we actually go for a short break, this will be our last question, but what I hear from you is humanity and compassion that is definitely driving the decision. We do have another member of the international media, Abdi Latif from the New York Times, who is asking some academics and right groups have characterized UK-Rwanda partnership as echoing and troubling the colonial practice of moving people across continents and seas without their consent. How would you respond to this?
Well, first of all, I have seen a lot of writings in the New York Times that are not well informed at all, but rather things that are just written there reflecting the biases of those people who write them. But that's a question for another time. So on this one, for academics, rights groups, no, but I wish this person asking this would be telling us or telling me the right way of dealing with these problems, complex problems, as of the academics and rights groups. Because these academics and rights groups should present to us well researched, well informed, and right ways of dealing with these challenges. And then maybe once we have all seen that and argued about it from different experiences, a guideline could be created and say you must follow this guideline. But they are not presenting, even the person referring to these academics and rights groups are not referring to us. are not giving us the guidelines these people have set forth through research, through different ways of experiences that could contribute to that. No, they're just making a criticism. No, but I have explained where we have come from ourselves as Rwanda, knowing that the migration issues are broad and complex and everywhere. In fact, it happened that one time I was being asked about this migration problem and the UK and Rwanda partnership. And then just as I was stepping out of the room, I was looking, watching the news. There are things happening between Morocco and Spain, and then there was another thing happening, Mexico-US border, then to do with the same. So why don't these good people advise those countries to how they should go about these matters? What I see is the complexity and really difficulty of these presented by migrants and those having to deal with them. It's like anybody in the world is dealing with it the way they want, but I have explained what we are doing with UK. It is specific. It's dealing with people being bought and sold and forced across borders, and the country is saying, no, we can't keep having this. There are those, naturally, there are people who have been made, by the way, UK citizens, as we have done. There are people who have been made Rwandan citizens from other countries because they meet certain criteria and standards of enabling us to give them either this status or managing them in whatever way that is appropriate, that gives them a chance for life in the future. So I don't know if anyone is saying what you did between the UK, it's not enough to characterize it that way generally without being specific. What is it that is being done wrong by UK saying there are people being smuggled into our territory? No, we have to accept some people, and they have accepted some people into UK and even given them citizens of all nationalities. We have done that ourselves, and now here they are saying no. We have to stop this smuggling of people into our country so that we have enough time and space to identify those who meet the criteria, those who can allow in and those who have to reject. Because that is the issue. If you are going to say everyone will run to any country as they want, or will be smuggled into any country, and that country is forced to accept them, I don't think you're going to succeed. It's not going to work that way. Yes, all countries, including Rwanda, will accept people, but we have criteria of how we accept these people. Except, for example, refugees. Refugees, when they come rushing into the country because they're refugees or just going, in a way, you accept them. But that's why they are put in camps and they are kept as such, as refugees in those countries. But they are not necessarily accepted and integrated as citizens of any country automatically. No, that's not what happens. So, but if you had people smuggling others into any country, then that country has a right to say, no, we don't accept this smuggling. We have to stop it. We have to sort out these people according to certain criteria that we accept. This is what I'm saying. So those good people should explain to us should draw for us guidelines. What do we do? How do we deal with the migrants? But for the time being, I think we have to deal with it the way we are dealing with it, and we think there's nothing wrong with it.
Well, for you who is watching, you had very wise words from the President of Rwanda, President Paul Kagame, who says, let's have more suggestions and less criticism, less questions. And perhaps yours could be one of them. So stay with us, and we'll be back shortly with more.
Listen.